This episode is brought to you by Encore Business Group, Ericola Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ron Walsh airs live Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
To Shayne Graham's Extra Points with Ryan Walsh, presented by Encore Business Group. Merry Christmas to everybody. Thanks for joining us on Christmas Day here. We decided it would be good to do a show and have you join us on Christmas here, and hope you had a good time with your family or whatever you ended up doing here. Excuse me. I had a good time with my family. My family's still here with me. My mom's in studio. Aaron's keeping us on track, and we're watching the game. It'll be good. We'll be able to do a little bit of a watch along. We'll have Zack Moran come on of Lines Wire in about 10-15 minutes, and he'll help us go through the game here. But Aaron's been watching the game in preparation, and we were watching the game in studio here to prepare. It's been a little bit of a slow game, a lot of injuries between these two teams here. But so, Aaron, as you know, we always start off with the thing of the day. It's Christmas, so I had to think of a Christmas. There are actually some national days on Christmas. One was National Alphabet Day. It's you have to speak without the L. We're not going to try that. We're already doing a show on Christmas. Too high of a degree of difficulty there. So we're not going to try that one. But my question for you is, do you have a top, I'm thinking 5, but that might be lofty, Christmas movies? You could just give me 1, 2, and you can brainstorm on the other. And I can filibuster and give you some of mine if you need to think of
Yeah,
something.
and I was trying to think about that too, because I actually was at my folks' house, and I'm trying to remember. It's an old classic movie, but I'll say probably one of my favorite ones is Elf. I like that one. That's
a classic one. I was talking about this with my sister and brother-in-law when I stepped at their house earlier today. I think some of it is it's hard to make like new classic Christmas movies because it's kind of the era that you grew up in. It's like, okay, if you were young when it was Home Alone, then, Home Alone's one of your favorites. Or obviously It's a Wonderful Life is a very old movie, but they play it often, and so that's become a classic. I usually am kind of off the board with my picks as seen by the Thanksgiving draft and other things we've done on the show. I'm a little bit more of kind of off base on some of these things. But here's my question to you. I want to rank one of my movies. This is a very volatile subject here, whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie, because I want to put that in my top 5. And we were discussing what makes a Christmas movie, because it's like, well, okay, so it took part during Christmas. That's a Christmas movie, right? It's like Home Alone is a Christmas movie because it took place during the Christmas season. If it didn't take place during the Christmas season, it wouldn't be a Christmas movie. If that was like over Easter time, it wouldn't be a Christmas movie.
Exactly.
So Die Hard would be in there. I just watched, this is another kind of off the board pick, but I just watched this one for, I don't know what number time it was for me, but Trading Places, another one that takes place at Christmas time. Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy trade places. That's a classic one. There's a few that would be in there. I think I would have to put Jingle All the Way in there. I like action movies and I like comedies. I still like Home Alone and some of the classic ones, but those aren't the ones I have a tendency to rewatch. It's more like Trading Places and Die Hard and movies like that. Elf has got to be in there, though. Elf is a good one. That's one of the latest. I feel like that's maybe the latest classic that we've made as far as movies go for Christmas movies. So we'll ask Zack and Shayne about, I know Shayne's a big Christmas guy. He told us on a previous episode that he's got 7 Christmas trees up at his house. So he's into it. But what do you think? What do you think about this game so far? I feel like we've had you on when we've been doing a lot of Minnesota coverage. You did a preview for us when we had the first Minnesota game. Didn't quite go according to plan. Now we've got Minnesota again while you're in here. What do you think of this game? This is not probably what Netflix envisioned when they paid $150 million or whatever for this game earlier in the season.
Yeah, and I will say there's a lot of people upset that the game's on Netflix. But, I mean, from what I watched before I got over here, it was tied 7-7. I think it's 10-7 now.
A 13-7 it's made it to, yeah.
Man. Yeah, I was going to say, it's offense not looking as sharp. Obviously, the Lions are pretty beat up. Obviously, their tight end situation, they're both hurt. Offensive line hasn't been at full strength, and obviously losing Frank Ragnow at the beginning of the season kind of hurt them. There's a lot of, they're out of sync, it seems like. Not really, can't blame play calling or anything like that. Really, it's just, part of the biggest thing of why they've had success was being able to run the ball. And it seems like the last few games they've had a problem being consistent with the run game. And then as much as I like Jared Goff, having him throwing the ball 40, 50 times a game is usually not the best recipe.
And this hasn't been a real Jared Goff kind of game, because even the completions that he's made, he's obviously thrown a couple picks. He had the fumble that looked like a transfer issue from the center, as Aaron mentioned. Young offensive line. I mean, they're really playing a lot of young guys. They knew going in with the Ragnow retirement that would force guys like Ratledge and Mahogany into action, but now with no Glasgow and some of the other injuries, they're really forced to. They've got a real patchwork offensive line here. That's, all things considered, not doing a terrible job, but it's a tough defensive front, and for the fact that these guys haven't really worked together, it's not that bad of a job. But even the solutions that Goff has been having, it occurs to me that it really hasn't even been very Goff-like. Like, he's throwing on the run, and he's made some plays on the run, but that's just really not his game, to be chased out of the pocket and then throwing on the run. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this game concludes. I think the Lions fan base could use a comeback victory. They've fallen short on several games here. Like you said, their playoff hopes are kind of dangling by a thread, but it is possible that the Packers could lose these final two games. The Ravens aren't going to be easy, and then the other one is a division clash against Minnesota.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I believe both Jordan Love and Micah Parsons, I believe, are both hurt for the rest of the season, or at least won't play the last 2 weeks. So there's a good chance that they get in. But yeah, a lot of other things got to be in play. Obviously, that loss last week to the Steelers was kind of, now we got to rely on outside factors besides Lions winning now. But I mean, it looks like right now Minnesota's giving them everything they can handle.
Minnesota's tough. They're well coached. Flores is a great defensive coach. He might get another shot, I don't know, in the NFL as a head coach. We'll see what happens there. But Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. I mean, he's got a young. It's interesting to me that he went from having Sam Darnold and J.J. McCarthy and Daniel Jones, and now at the end of the season, he's starting Max Brosmer here. That's kind of that's obviously Jones is injured now. Darnold's having a great year in Seattle. They're sneakily one of the best teams. They're basically the top of the NFC right now with that win over the Rams. So I think a lot of people were fine with him leaving from Minnesota, but that's been a real downgrade. They've had offensive line issues too. They've had a ton of injury issues like the Lions have, but JJ didn't appear ready, and then behind that offensive line, that got even worse. So it would have been interesting to see what Darnold would have been able to do with this team this year.
Yeah, I mean, and I had to look up the quarterback that's playing for them because I'd never even heard of him, honestly. But, he's playing actually pretty good, making some throws. Saw a couple of first downs he picked up with his feet, so I was like, doing pretty good for them. Yeah,
he's playing within himself. He's using the weapons that they've got. It looks like Jones is out too, because this is another very injured team. This is another patchwork offensive line, because like we joked about the game being on Netflix and Netflix wanting this game earlier in the season. I mean, we got to keep in mind at around this same time last season, these two were battling it out for the division. So there was no real reason to think that wasn't going to be the case this year, but they've both really suffered a lot of injury issues, and the plans weren't bad, I don't think, in general. I don't think on the Lions side the plan was real bad, even though there's some criticism coming in now. That seems a little bit after the fact, and hindsight being 2020. But with Minnesota, it was the same thing. It was, hey, JJ, let's put him as the starter. Let's not have a lot of competition. I think that was the big reason they got rid of Jones and anybody else that could have been a competition for him. And that didn't, unfortunately, really work out for Minnesota fans and the Michigan fans that were rooting for him too. Although he's still very young, and I don't think the jury's out on him. This is what happened with Sam Darnold and some of these other quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is another one. They gave up on them too early and then went to other teams and had their success there. It's not like it's time for Minnesota to do that. Hopefully, once they get their offensive line back intact and they can regroup for next year, they should be better off. Because as we talked about this with Jeff a little bit last week or on Monday, how it's going to be a big difference where the Lions land in the division, because we got to keep in mind that they had a very difficult out of division schedule, and they were playing the top team in every division. It's going to be different if they're playing the third or fourth team here, depending on how this game and the rest of the season shakes out.
Yeah, and I will say, at least with the comparison with J.J. McCarthy and then like Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones, J.J. seems to at least be like, when he's healthy, he's playing pretty well. I mean, people can make the claim or argument that Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones had some pretty bad games. Biggest thing I think with J.J., he's just got to be healthy. If he's healthy, he plays phenomenal. I think part of the problem too is, got to learn to slide, got to learn to run out of bounds. He's not a real big quarterback, so him taking those unnecessary shots, kind of, when the game's on the line, that's one thing, but I think there's sometimes where it's like, run out of bounds, save your body. They're going to try to kill the quarterback. That's just the way it is.
That's a good point, because when you think of a lot of these young guys that are whatever you want to call mobile quarterbacks, most of them are mobile quarterbacks, not necessarily running quarterbacks, a la Lamar Jackson, which he's a pretty beefy guy now. He can take a hit pretty well. But these young guys, I get that they're going for it and everything, but hardly any of them, I feel like that's a criticism across the league. You got Tyler Shue in New Orleans, who's kind of one of these guys that's gritting things out. Look at what ended up happening to Carson Wentz. I feel like his inability to properly take the contact or reduce the contact that he was getting as a running quarterback actually shortened his career, because now he's very injury prone. He was basically relegated to a backup role. These guys do have to watch that, because the coaches don't want him doing it. Yeah, you want to put in maximum effort and all that, but whether it's Ben Johnson with Caleb Williams, Kevin O'Connell with J.J. McCarthy, New Orleans with Shue over there, and it doesn't matter who you have as Kellen Moore as your coach or as the organization. All these coaches want you to slide. They want you to protect your body, because if you're the quarterback, it's not worth trying to get that extra yard if you're trying to be the young franchise quarterback.
Yeah, and especially the young guys too, because it's like longevity is key. I think, and obviously like Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers are, not obviously they're not the biggest running quarterbacks in the world, but they were a lot smarter, and I think that kind of made their career last longer, because they weren't taking the unnecessary hits. Even like, I think there was an interview with Josh Allen for the Buffalo Bills too. It's just like, after a while, man, those hits add up on you. So I mean, he wouldn't be playing, I don't think, the same length as Aaron Rodgers or anything like that too, because he uses his feet and he's a bigger quarterback, so he'll try to run guys over if he needs to get in the end zone.
Even Brady, when he was in the pocket, he was very good at taking a hit properly. Obviously, he didn't get out and run like you said, but this is a wrestling term, but there's only so many bumps on your bump card. That's what they say about wrestlers, even though it's predetermined and all of that. You can only take so many hits. I think that's the same with football to a degree. Your body's got to wear down even though you take care of it well, like a Tom Brady. But yeah, hopefully for the sake of the Vikings, they teach JJ that a little bit as his career wears on. The Lions are having a good defensive possession here. We're gonna I'm not sure what just happened there, but they had a good play. They've got the Vikings backed up, and we'll grab Zack Moran from Lions Wire and get him in the conversation and finish the game out with him. Hopefully he'll bring us some good luck here. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Happy to get this next guest on here. We haven't had him on all season, which is amazing to me. You've seen him a decent amount on the Sports Project Project. And spoiler alert, we'll see him on the Sports Project talking to me again. So sorry about that, Zach, because I'll be covering for Steve on Saturday. But I think already you've brought us some good luck. Ever since we even got you on the line, Zach, they backed them up, and now they're driving. So I like this timing. We needed you. This is clearly the missing piece. We needed you on the air for this final 6 minutes plus.
We need to get something going, because this has been a very tough watch in a game we should have easily been dominating right now.
It is tough to watch this team not really have their same kind of killer instinct to a degree, and some of that is, yes, they're missing some pieces and all that, but they used to be, last year they were very good at putting away teams that they were supposed to, and doing and being above the spread against the teams that were going to be a little bit tougher, and that's been a little bit hit or miss this year. They're still trying to stick with the running game. At least they've kept it close and kept it within a possession to keep that running game in play here.
Oh, for sure. In all things considering, it's the 5 turnovers, but somehow, some way, they're winning a touchdown to go in the lead, which just shows them the domination that we're having on defense, putting our offense in great situations right here. And that's the thing, is the way this team is built, they're not gonna just start abandoning the run. Yeah, the offensive line right now is tough to watch, with Decker being out, Sewell with his ailments, and Mahogany still getting back in, Tate being a rookie, you got Kingsley Agukun, having a second start ever. So you're kind of like, it's the missing pieces, you can definitely be felt, but yeah, right now but hopefully they can start piecing it together and finish the season strong.
I think one underrated thing, too, that we really haven't been talking about enough with the offensive line piece of it, because when you talk about the injuries, automatically go to the defense. They're missing 3/4 of the starting secondary. There's a lot of pieces they're missing there. They had the Legion of Whom having to fill in there. I still love that nickname. I don't know. Right? I don't know who thought of it, but it's genius. But with the offense, they didn't have as many injuries, but now they're pooling on the offensive line and the tight ends, and those two things in concert, I think, are really hurting them, because I don't think we talked about the loss of Laporta enough. He was trending towards all-pro, Pro Bowl type season. He was really a key contributor for them. You could tell he was healthy again. He was developing as a blocker. Brock Wright was supplementing as a blocker. Losing both of those guys at the same time while they still had Zylstra out was a very tough loss, and you can tell, which is not really even a criticism. It's just kind of a certainty almost. You can tell with a lot of these guys that they had to pull off the street. They're not really familiar with the varied blocking assignments that come with a complicated offense like this. They don't always know where they're going because they haven't been a part of this team very long.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with that. The loss of our 2 starting tight ends is probably not spoken enough about, because Brock and Laporta were both great blockers along that line, and when you got a team built as stout as they are, you're going to need those two. But you have Giovanni Ricci and Anthony Fursker, you're kind of like, okay, who are those guys? You're like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And it definitely be fun. You could definitely see that the running game is not as potent as those, where those two would be starting in the lineup. And even in the passing game, Laporta brings it's probably golf security blanket right on the underneath routes, and the threat of him as a receiver, you got to play to it just with his blocking abilities, and there's no real threat on the tight ends going out for the passes right now, and I think defenses can really tee up on that and just go head in and just stop the runs when they're in the game, because majority of the time they're going to be there blocking.
we all know that the points get kind of aggregated when you listen to a broadcast, especially since it's all national broadcast. It's not a local broadcast for the Lions unless you're listening to the radio. But it does seem like one of the main points that they're always making on the national broadcast is the lack of secondary targets beyond St. Brown and JMO. And Laporta was that. I mean, shoot, he was ranking above JMO as far as targets were trending, and as far as his importance, as you highlighted, Zach, with being the safety blanket over the middle, because it's changed. We talked about this a little bit because we were talking about Campbell's decision making and his aggression kind of being turned against him a little bit, how it's a little bit more predictable. That's the same thing when you've got an offense, when you have to throw on third and fourth down, you pretty much know that ball is going St. Brown's way. When Laporta was in there, it was harder to know because you could maybe have more room for JMO on a deep shot. If you want to take a shot, you've got Laporta and St. Brown running routes over the middle that hopefully are playing off of each other. So it was a lot harder to key in on one guy. They're able to do that a lot better this year, really at every phase, even in the running game to a degree, because Montgomery has been more muted in his usage.
Yeah, and I think that's probably been one of the bigger storylines going in is the usage with Montgomery is typically what the numbers have shown. If Montgomery's rushing for a fair amount, then that means Goff is having a good game too with the passing, because now they're having to play more to the run instead of the passing, giving Goff a little bit more time. But yeah, it's unfortunate how almost one-dimensional the offense has gotten, and like you said, very predictable. Yeah, all you got to do is cover the two and have you have any sort of starting secondary. You can cover those two, and then have your front seven up front doing the run blocking, and it just feels very of a vanilla offense that we have not grown accustomed to seeing. We expect these explosive plays, and every now and again we get one, but that's unfortunately few and far between, especially in recent weeks, where you're kind of like, we know this offense is better, but I don't know what the play calling or the execution part of it. It's definitely going to be something that they're definitely going to look back in the off season and hopefully get some answers for it.
I think one thing they've kind of lost, and some of it, this is game script and all the issues with the defense and all the injuries on the defense, but this was a phrase that was probably overused last year. I haven't heard it much this year because they really haven't been playing it so much, but along with grit, it feels like one of the other terms that was used all the time last year was complementary football, and they really haven't played a lot of complementary football this year, partially because it's harder to do that with the defense, with all the pieces missing, and trying to get the new coordinator in there, new scheme, all that. But it's about the position that you're putting yourself in as a team. You've got great special teams typically as well, with Dave Phipp at the helm, and really none of those units has played quite as well as last year. And some of it's personnel, some of it's probably adjusting to new coaching, at least on the offensive and defensive side. And that's definitely part of the offensive side, because the numbers are all up when Campbell's in there calling plays. He's clearly very capable, but you also have to think of the workload that's taking, that's putting on him, that could be allocated to other things too, because he's only one man. And I know he drinks eight, the equivalent of like 12 cups of coffee a day, but he's still only one man.
Yeah, that's the thing. His attention is not on the whole team itself. And you want to say, is it because of that? Things are spread thin, and he's not able to bring attention the attention to all the players and their assignments, or is it to the point of his coaches are they not prepping for the players? Are they not getting them well prepared for the games as well? So and that's going to be something to really look at. And that's what kills me is the especially in the run defense. Our defensive line has been out of all the places that haven't been hit with injuries to defensive line, but somehow our run defense has really taken a step back. And you're like, okay, is that the defensive line coaching? Is that scheme with the defensive coordinator? And you're just some head scratching things, and so something needs to happen, and the attention needs to go back to the assignments that are being put on the players, and some accountability, especially in the coaching as well.
That's a good point, especially because it's been well documented that the injuries that they've been having on the defense have been primarily in the secondary. The linebacking unit has been very healthy outside of Rodriguez. That's been a very strong unit as a whole. And the defensive line, they got McNeil back late, but it seems like after he's come back, that should have made that stronger. Tyleik Williams hopefully coming into form at that point in time. Then Davenport comes back. They get more reinforcements. Lopez has played pretty well in his time on the line. You've got Wheat on the outside that's played fairly well. You've got a lot of contributors, but somehow that's led to a step back. And weirdly, I do think it has to do with the secondary to a degree, because those run supporting defensive backs, primarily you're talking about Joseph. Sure, he's more the back safety, but you've got Branch and Arnold. You might want to have your criticisms of Arnold, but he was primarily pretty good in run support. Yes. And so it's been strange to see that even though they've been getting a stronger defensive line, it's really been weaker against the run game, and I do think the secondary has a big part to do with that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what Branch has been, the hard hitter, covering up the lanes in the run game and laying down some vicious blows. And like you said, for some reason, Tyrion has always got some sort of vendetta against them, and he was absolutely solid to start the season. And you can definitely see he took the corner from year one to year two in every aspect, and turning into that CB1 in the defense. But when you got backups playing in the secondary, Avonte Maddox, Thomas Harper, and now Jalen Mills playing out there because we lost someone to concussion earlier today. You're just unfortunately, there's going to be mistakes, and you were just hoping that maybe that stout front seven would pick it up. But it's just one of those things where you just kind of hope, wish, and a prayer that they figure it out. But it's just been, Jack Campbell's had been having a great season. Being named to the Pro Bowl for first year, and it's just almost feels like it's lackluster. At some point you're just like, man, he's having a great season, but it's the wins are not accumulating, especially on the defensive side, on the run defense and the short passing game.
This is one of the fascinating things to me about football in general, is it's such a complementary game. We're talking about complementary offense and defense and complementary football, but it's also within the units together. It's hard to sometimes identify the pieces that, okay, you're missing this piece and that's affecting the game this way. And that's kind of the conversation we're having. I want to come back with that conversation. We got to change our luck a little bit here, Zach, because they scored while we're on the phone. Looks like there was just another fumble. So we got to regroup here. We got to take a quick break, and we'll come back with Zack Moran and continue the conversation. And hopefully we can get some momentum back here. So you're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Zach, our plan didn't work here with going to a commercial. Maybe you saw what happened there, though. I saw the fumble, but it looked like it wasn't Goff down. Was it? I saw Van Ginkel tore it out of his hands. He wasn't down with possession before that.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch the replay myself as well. It looked like he was down with the ball, and Van Ginkel ripped it out of his hands while he was down. So I'm a little confused as to what's going on. But considering how this season has gone with officiating, not just with the Lions, but the league itself. It doesn't shock me one bit. The amount of confusion and amount of the inconsistency that comes with the refs, even on that Addison touchdown. It didn't even look like he crossed the plane. It looked like he went out of bounds with it, but maybe a little tip of the football got over the pylon. But it's almost to a point where you're just shaking your head and you're like, I don't know football anymore.
Well, yeah, we've been talking about that a decent amount on the show because I do try. I mean, like we've been talking about, a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of layers to it. And so to really get in depth and not misdiagnose what you're watching, there's a lot of different things that you have to look at. And unfortunately, I'm not a big anti-officiating person. I'm actually one that's primarily been in the camp of, hey, this is a disconnect between there's cognitive dissonance that happens here when you watch it on TV, because we get to see it on TV and we get all the angles and we get to slow it down and we get to see it afterwards. They see it one time on the field with all these massive human beings running around, running in front of them, all the sounds, all the lights, everything. But I agree with you, Zach. It has gotten to kind of a fever pitch where it's annoying me more so, not as somebody that covers the Lions and, hey, the Lions aren't getting the calls. It's more so it's affecting the game to too high of a degree when you have these athletes that are trying to hone their craft to get 1 second faster and 1 inch higher on their jump and whatever it is, but they're trying to get the best they can. We need to do the same thing with the referees as well. We need to give them the same platform to succeed and the same basis to succeed as the players, because they need to be at the top of their game as well, so that the game is fair and it can be left up to the players.
Well, that's exactly it. Is that they're making critical calls at the worst possible time, affecting the outcomes of the games, leaving the sour taste in everyone's mouth. Like, this game shouldn't end on that particular note. This game should have been won or lost by the players and not by a ticky tack or a close call where you're just like, that could have gone either way, but you decided to call it now instead of previously before. And I think that's what it drives people up the wall, is that you make the call now, but they've been doing that all game. So you're kind of just sit there and you're just flabbergasted. And the amount of replay assists and camera angles and everything at this point, we shouldn't be. These calls shouldn't have been up to almost interpretation. We got everything they need to make that call, but somehow, some way, the lack of transparency, the league wants to go with it, wants to make it a behind the scenes game where you're just, please explain. If you gave us an explanation of what you saw, what you were thinking, maybe we can understand a little bit better. But because you don't give us that part, we always leave it to our interpretation, and majority of the time that's going to be solely against you because we have no idea what was going on behind the curtains.
That's a great point, and I'm sure you saw the tweet by Will Birchfield where he was talking about, he basically was joking about the pool report after the game a couple weeks ago, but a lot of people took that as reality. That's the crazy part, because it was like, well, this isn't that far away from what we could foresee happening. So like I had people come to me saying, "Oh, did you see this?" I'm like, "No, it was a tweet by a Lions writer," and so then he kind of confused people because he's not a parody account and he was doing kind of a parody thing there for that moment. But you can kind of relate to why he was doing it, because that wouldn't be that far-fetched compared to how they handle it. And the NFL historically is very reactive. It's very reactionary to things like this. I mean, we could go into, not that I want to get dark with it, but you go into things like the Ray Rice situation where they had to wait till they had the footage. They had to wait till the footage got released, and then and then it went from a 2-game suspension, which is less than what you get for PEDs now, into a much deeper suspension. But it is very reactive, and it basically is usually based on public outcry and things like that, because of course they don't want the money to be affected, and that's the bottom line for them. So in a way, I'm glad there's so much discussion, because I'm hoping it will lead to something, because the way this is going, and odds are the way things are looking right now, the Lions won't be in the playoffs, but in the playoffs, I could see something happening where that becomes the discussion more so than, hey, these key matchups in the NFL playoffs, let's watch them. If it becomes more about the officiating in the playoffs, I think that's going to be another omen for the NFL to do something about it here.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. You don't want to come to that point. You don't want an NFL playoff game, or heaven forbid the Super Bowl, be decided on such a close call where you're just like, you decided to call that now. You want it almost feel like you want the spotlight now because of X, Y, and Z, and you're just like, well, I think it was last year. I think it was last year's Super Bowl where the game was ultimately decided at the end by a I don't know, last year or a couple of years ago, where it was decided by a penalty and they ran out the clock, and you're just like, well, it was a good game until that point. Great, thanks guys, appreciate that one. And then, if I remember right, the CBA for the Refs Association is up for this year. So I think he's got a lot of questions and a lot of discussions to happen to maybe start deciding to bring in full-time refs instead of part-time guys, and make this their job. Make them accountable for the calls. Make them, they get accountable. They either get the best games or the not off games where there's not going to be much viewership. But at some point, the refs need to be held accountable for the calls or lack of calls or their discussions or anything to that nature, because it's an epidemic in this league, I'm sorry to say, this year.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. We talked about that on a previous show, I think one of last week's shows, because we mentioned the fact that they are not full-time, and a lot of people were surprised to even learn that, because it is kind of a surprising fact. If you don't know it, you would just assume that these guys are full-time. Like, you've got all this money invested in this league. There's a lot of dollars that depend on it, especially with gambling money being involved now and everything that's involved. It's quite the business model. And to have basically your lawmakers, your people that are keeping everybody on the right side of things, having them not be full time is just kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of wild to even think about it, because I compared it to being a teacher. It's like, okay, teachers, people, I have a bunch of friends that are teachers, and people that aren't teachers make a big deal. Well, they have summers off, they have 3 months off. It doesn't end up being 3 months off. Any of us that have a teacher in our lives know that they work after the semester's over, the year's over. They work before the year begins, and they have a lot of continued education during the summer. That's what the referees need. They need to be training in the off season, and like you said, get to their peak ability, so that these games, if they do hinge on them, it will be the correct call, and we know we can lean on these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys should be consistently looking at film, looking at the rules, and doing eons of film review and practice with it, because as big of a product as the NFL is, I know they want to create chaos and controversy, and because guess what, it's still news. They're still being talked about. So the old saying goes, bad publicity is still publicity. So they're still getting their product in the face is just not in the right light. But what do they care? We're still watching. They're still getting the viewership. I mean, I don't know how the Netflix viewership is going this year, but adds up the wazoo on this one. But either way, it's just and I think a lot of the fan bases, not just with Detroit, it has definitely noticed something going amiss with the league and how they're handling the refs and the calls and everything, because the most inopportune times come in, and at this point, I think we just need to get some consistent refs in the league full time. And I think that would solve a lot of issues that's plaguing this league right now.
Exactly. Like you said, they have more technology than ever. They have more knowledge than ever. They just have to leverage that accordingly with full-time folks. So hopefully they're able to do that here. But yeah, unfortunately, this game has not turned with you on here, Zach. It looks like they're headed towards being officially eliminated from the playoffs. I do like to see how much Tesla has been involved here late in the season, because that's one thing that you can at least do with these games that are not meaning as much because they're not going to make the playoffs. You are trying out these young offensive linemen, tight ends that maybe can be depth pieces next year, seeing what you have on the defense, because they did retain some guys. We got to keep in mind from last year, they retained some guys that were valuable pieces that they had to put out there because Hutchinson was hurt and other people were hurt. They got Al-Qadim Muhammad as part of that. And hopefully there's some good things that come out of that this year with maybe guys like Frazier and Egukon and other folks that they're having to try out. Tesla should get more looks down the stretch, because I feel like that's where our heads have to go naturally. We used to do this very early in the season with the old Lions, where it would be about week 6, and we'd be going, okay, well, so who's number one on the draft board next year? And it's not quite that dire. They're right about 500. They've got a lot of pieces to put together and to look forward to here. But that is one thing to be watching as the year concludes, is they'll have a lot of young guys that will probably get some more looks as a result of being eliminated from the playoffs here.
Oh, for sure. And I'll be. I know, knowing how Campbell runs the team, the starters are probably going to still play. They will, even though the Bears have already made the playoffs, they can still try to spoil them depending on how the Packers game goes. But yeah, this is the time to see what you have, is see what needs to be very. It's managed over, like I said, test the other offensive linemen and Miles Frazier and Kingsley to see if potentially he's the future at center, because they desperately need someone at center. Unfortunately, Glasgow was thrown into a position that he was not ready for with the Ragnar retirement. He tried to come back, but it's. With a hamstring issue, that was a short-lived pipe dream, and like we're gonna be drafting, probably in the mids between 16 to 18 roughly. So depending how the draft goes, we can see if we can get a little bit of immersion in talent. Safety is going to be looked at, because we have no Branch is going to be out till almost, unfortunately, probably this time next season, and we don't know how Kirby's knee is with his, what issues are going with that. If he's going to be able to keep playing, it's going to be interesting how they attack this offseason, because they've been more on the conservative approach, bringing in depth guys and relying on their guys that they drafted, or players that have been in that system for a while now. And I think Campbell and Holmes are going to look real hard in that mirror. I think they're going to realize that some drastic measures need to be taken on their approach and how building this team, and And I think they need to be really aggressive in free agency. I know we got a bunch of contracts coming because we signed a lot of extensions, but money can always be moved around, and see if we can get some of that top talent in Detroit next season, because the team still has a strong core with it.
Exactly. There's still a lot of reason for hope. I think I don't think you can blame them too much with trying to depend on a culture that produced a 15-2 record last year under difficult circumstances with all those injuries. It didn't break their way thus far this year, but they've got a lot of pieces for next year and a lot to build on. I think I'm seeing a lot of, it's almost like PTSD to a degree. If I hadn't named the shows what I have, I wanted to kind of incorporate PTSD but turn it into something with Detroit, because that's what a lot of Lions fans have, because they go to the same old Lions, and
yep.
I think this is a good time to remind people that this isn't exactly the same old Lions. A team that's 8-8 with this many injuries, with this difficult of a schedule, they've still got the culture. They've got a good coach. They've got a good general manager. They've got a good system overall. They need to make some tweaks, and I think there will be more of an overhaul, like you said, Zach, in the offseason, because we could see some of the guys that were part of this rebuild, that you could see them say, okay, maybe it's time to move on from Anzalone and move Barnes inside, or there's been a lot of talk about Montgomery. I haven't been as big of a fan of that, but the pay is now out of slot for him, considering his usage. That's not his fault. I still think he's got the talent, but he's being paid like a top 12 running back, and he's not really getting top 12 running back reps because of Gibbs, but that's a good problem to have. You've got a lot of the young talent that's coming on or coming back, hopefully to Slough with a full season under his belt. Arnold comes back healthy. A lot of the other guys that we're talking about that are hurt. There's a lot of reason to be hopeful. I don't think we can do same old Lions with an 8-8 team that has this sort of infrastructure.
No, absolutely not. And unfortunately, that's the narrative is, well, a lot of people are gonna build on. But if anyone who knows this team knows that this did not go the way they hoped this season. There was Super Bowl aspirations, especially after last season. And yeah, we lost a few players, but in all intents and purposes, we still had the same team, and just we're like, okay, let's just put it all together and let's try it again. And that's that. And I think that's the things people realize during the NFL is it winning any game is tough in itself. And when things don't go according to plan, like the offensive coordinator situation that happened with the play calling, the amount of injuries in one particular position group, I think the chemistry along the offensive line. But that's any Lions fan today will hopefully be patient with it and just run with how this team's going to be ran. I think a lot of people still have trust in the front office. I think there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that are going to be made, because this can't happen again next season. Everyone says, "Oh, the window is shrinking." I'm like, let's just hang tight before we shut it all the way. Is give them time, let them have this bad taste in their mouth. Let them experience what it is of almost failed expectations for this year, and see what they can do and turn around next season.
Exactly. This team has responded well, typically, to losses and being behind the proverbial 8 ball. So I don't imagine that with an off season and with some changes and some upgrades, it wouldn't be the same coming into next year, because they'll have a renewed sense of purpose, a renewed chip on their shoulder, which they always operate better with that. But we appreciate you doing this, Zach. Thanks for taking time on Christmas here. I guess I'll talk to you again on Saturday. So everybody tune in 10 to 12. I think Zach's slot is in the 11 o'clock hour there for the Sports Project, but he'll be giving us more insight then, and we'll have more to talk about then. And but on your way out, to make sure to do your plugs. And I meant to ask you in the beginning, do you have a favorite Christmas movie here? That was going to be my themed question of the day.
Oh, favorite Christmas movie. It's always a toss between A Christmas Story and Christmas Vacation, but I think I got to get with the same old classics with the Red Ryder BB gun.
That's a good one. We were talking about that in the break because Aaron remembered that one after we were talking about it. And then Christmas Vacation is a good mention too. That's a very popular one. We were talking about how they're not making as many Christmas classics anymore because it's more like from back in the day. Those are the ones that are popular. So
now it's the Hallmark Christmas movies have the same plot every single time.
Exactly. Very formulaic with those. But but we really appreciate it. Merry Christmas to you. We appreciate you coming on the show and covering the lines for us, and we'll look forward to talking to you again on Saturday here.
Absolutely. And you guys have a fine Christmas for the rest of the day.
You too, Zach. Enjoy it, and tell the people where they can follow you in the meantime here.
Yep. I'm over at Lions Wire. Unfortunately, I've had to take a little hiatus for this year. I had some things happen during the year, but I'm hoping to get back into the swing of things and plug away at that content.
Definitely, it's good stuff, and there's going to be a lot of content to be had here with the off season pending and with everything going on this year. So we'll look forward to following you, and we'll look forward to talking with you on Saturday. Thanks again, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
All right, take care, Zach.
You too.
Thanks to Zack Moran. Appreciate him coming on, especially on Christmas. It was a good conversation with him. The game didn't quite go how Lions fans wanted it to, but we're going to take a quick break, and then I'm going to get Aaron's takes on the game, and then we'll bring on Shayne shortly here. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here in studio with Mom and Aaron. We just finished up watching the game. Not what people had hoped here for Christmas Day. Especially we've had losses on Thanksgiving and Christmas here, and we had shows on both days. So we'll try to improve people's spirits here. What'd you think of the game, Aaron? Do you have any words for the fans here to lift their spirits?
I don't know about the lift of spirits, but I was like 6 turnovers. It's kind of tough to win games when you have 6 turnovers. And obviously a lot of it's new guys in there. Obviously they don't have the chemistry as much as like the starters do. And it's just, even if they made the playoffs this year, which was kind of a long shot, depending, how it's went so far. It wasn't. I felt like because they weren't 100%, they weren't going to be, making it to us. This wasn't going to be a Super Bowl run. But I think this offseason, obviously, not making the playoffs, they'll have a higher draft pick. I think they got to look into free agency, and obviously you need to clean up some stuff on the offensive line. Have to have answers for both Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch being out for a while. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Like I said, even if they win one game, heck, I still remember the days when, the 0-16 team, and stuff like that. So it's like, every once in a while you're going to have a bad year. We saw that with Philly. They made it to the Super Bowl, lost to Kansas City, didn't make the playoffs the following year, and then they win the Super Bowl. So I'd rather have that type of situation where we miss the playoffs, but make a run for the Super Bowl, if not win it.
And incidentally, that was the year that they lost both of their coordinators, the Eagles. So that is kind of mirroring what's happening here, because you bring up a good point, Aaron. It's not an 0-16 season. They're sitting at 8-8 right now with one game to go, and they have a lot of reason to be hopeful going forward here, with hopefully making some moves. They got to get a little bit more aggressive because they haven't. We talked about that with Zach. They've kind of delved into the culture a little bit more rather than trying to bring guys in that are more difference maker type guys. And they've tried to find value guys that didn't really work out for them. They've saved some money through that process. So hopefully they can apply that here in the coming year for next year in the coming off season. So, but we're going to take another quick break, and then we're going to bring on Shayne Graham. Hopefully he wants to have the show be inspirational. I think he'll have some Christmas inspiration. He's chomping at the bit. He's been texting me here. He's ready to go. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get Shayne on after the break. Stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM.
From the Scully Statewide Moving Studios.
Country with a Twist, Jethro FM, 1530 AM, WYGR, Wyoming, Grand Rapids, 94.9 FM, Grand Rapids, 99.5 FM, Lowell, and Jethro South, 980 AM, WAKV Otsego, Plainwell, 98.9 FM, Otsego, and 105.1 FM, Kalamazoo. Available worldwide at jethro.fm.
We're getting the namesake of the show here, Shayne Graham, on the show. He's been gracious enough to give us a little time on Christmas, and I'm hoping he's had a good Christmas with his 7 Christmas trees here, if I remember correctly. So Merry Christmas to you, Shayne. How's your Christmas been so far?
It's been great. Thank you very much.
Now, I got a good question I mentioned that to a family member of mine, that you had 7 Christmas trees because they were talking about their Christmas trees. Do you have themes for each one? I didn't even think of that. Are there different themes for the different Christmas trees?
So if I'm being honest, we have the one main big tree, right? That's the biggest one that, you know, the wife takes the most pride in, and the decor and all the things that go on it. We do keep a color scheme in our upstairs main area, but we have a sunroom that kind of breaks off of our living room, our great room area, and it has 2 full, I think they're 8-foot trees in the corners, and it slightly follows the theme. It's got the same color scheme, but it's not as elaborately decorated. It's a little more, just generic, like kind of like a seasonal decor type trees. Then we have a tree at the top of our stairwell that goes down to the basement, and it's a little bit more involved, but yet still kind of a little generic. It's not quite as involved as the main tree. Then I think we have like 3 birchwood trees. They're like white with like kind of branches that sprawl all out with a bunch of white LED light tips on them. And then there's one in the office. There's one in the bedroom. There's one in the basement. There's one in the bedrooms in the basement. The one in the basement, though, I will say, it has a true theme. And my basement overall has a true theme because it is mostly kind of a condition with my wife when we do the decor in our house is that pretty much what she says goes, and I support what she says, but downstairs is the man cave, and that's where I've been given like full go ahead with everything. So it's mostly football stuff, helmets, jerseys, sports memorabilia, you name it. But we have a theme in the basement where it is literally lined in every corner of the wall with old school bright colored lights, whereas the upstairs is all white lights only red and silver and white, kind of traditional type decor. But the basement is all kind of that old school bright colors everywhere. And our tree in the basement is all bright colors with all of these ornaments that we had from our childhood on the tree. So it's a very nostalgic look down there. So that is kind of the main theme of the basement.
Well, you've told me about your collection, and it's a very impressive collection. Obviously, you've got some of your stuff from your career, and then there's a helmet theme to it. But you've got, I think, is it hundreds of pieces of memorabilia in the basement?
I would say well over 100. I don't know the exact count. I have a entire wall that is kind of vinyl wrapped in what's called hokey stone. So that is like a wallpaper that looks like the Gothic stonework of the masonry all across the Virginia Tech campus where I went to school. And then I have probably 40 to 50 full-size Virginia Tech helmets kind of spaced along that wall. And then I have the entire history of Virginia Tech's helmets, from no face mask to the helmets that they wore this past year, and they usually introduce a few new ones each year, so I'm always trying to keep up with it. But they're mini helmets, and I have them lined up in order, and it's kind of a hobby that I've done over the years. So I've got kind of a display on the wall for all of those, kind of a timeline type deal. And then I have a full, I don't know, maybe a 50-foot wall that kind of spans the whole length of the basement, that has every helmet I ever wore in my playing career, from high school through college, through my entire NFL career. And then I have my high school jersey, my college jersey, and then I have one big frame in the middle that has one jersey from every team I played for. I officially played for 10 NFL teams in my NFL career. So I have a frame that has 10 NFL jerseys within this one frame. You can imagine it's a big, heavy frame. So that kind of highlights the one back wall. And then outside of that, I have a coaching career where I coached at Central Michigan. I coached at Michigan State, and I coached at University of Florida. And I was a volunteer coach, per se, at Grand Valley State. So I have helmets kind of elaborating that part of my life. And then I have my Pro Bowl jersey up on that wall as well, along with a couple helmets with Pro Bowl logos and AFC logos with signed autographs of all the guys that played in that game. So that stuff is kind of plastered everywhere down there.
It's a great collection. Now, with the jerseys, were those hard to procure? Because I think people, a lot of the fans don't understand that those are really viewed as more kind of property of the team kind of thing. Nowadays, they have a bit of a fee. I think they have to pay. I don't know how it was in your days playing. Maybe that changed while you played, but it's not just as easy as, hey, I'm just gonna wear this jersey out of here because it's my last game.
Well, and typically when you play for a team, sometimes you finish the season, sometimes you're going to play the next season with that team. You're on an extended contract, all those kinds of things. You don't really think about it. They give you the option to keep a jersey, maybe if you want to buy a jersey or two, because they always have kind of a surplus made for you for backup reasons. But excuse me. When you play for a team and you're kind of filling in for an injury, or you're filling in for, or you fill in halfway through the season and you don't know what your future is going to be when the season's over, we kind of all started figuring out, like, hey, let me just hold on to some of this. And the equipment managers always made sure to make a good relationship with those guys. They usually put stuff aside for me, so I was able to hold on to a lot of that. So the one thing I do wish I had done at one point was maybe swap with a few of the guys, because that kind of became a bigger thing at the end of my career, and it's kind of a big thing now. But it's not something that I really did when I played. So some of my closest friends are like David Akers and Adam Vinatieri and Lawrence Tynes and, like Matt Prater, like guys that I've made friends with, but I just wish I had their jerseys. But now it's like I look in my basement. I hate that it looks like a shrine to myself, but that's all I really have.
That did become a lot more popular later because, I mean, some of these guys, some of the newer guys, I've seen some of their collections and they're unbelievable because some of them are very strategic in who they actually get. And it depends, like you're saying, you would likely trade with kickers. It kind of depends on position. And sometimes it's the school you went to, the college that you went to, you want to trade jerseys with those guys if it was a bigger school. But I've seen some of these collections by some of the bigger name guys, and yeah, I mean, it's like a who's who. It's like they've got a Hall of Fame collection as a shrine in their basement.
And it's funny because a lot of the guys that were doing that during my career, our teams actually really penalized us for swapping our jersey out because, that's a little bit of a burden on the equipment staff to like, oh, great, now we got to make a whole new jersey for this guy for next week's game. And, those jerseys, I don't know what they cost, anywhere from $200 to $500. I really don't know, but there is a cost associated, but there's labor in stitching the names on the back of it and creating, your number and the same exact, like, tailored fit that they try to make these jerseys. It creates work for those equipment guys, and they bust their tails for us. So it was something that we just didn't really push for, I guess. And then all of a sudden it became like the norm that everybody just started swapping jerseys. And I think they just made it a little easier for you at some point. But, I think about how cool it would have been, but also I realize how blessed I am to have even had the opportunity to be out there. So I don't really look back with too much regret.
Definitely. You've got a great collection, and it's nice that you were able to get a jersey from every location, because I've actually reunited some players with their old jerseys because they maybe are not they didn't play quite as long. They had a limited amount. They turn those jerseys over or repurpose them depending on the era as well. And so that's been some of the most fun I've had in the memorabilia industry, is actually finding a jersey and then getting it back to the player that wore it.
That's really cool. And I know that like there was a way you could actually get a hold of them or find them on eBay and different ways like that. Honestly, I found one of my jerseys that way because I guess guys like you had at some point, came in contact with this jersey one way or the other, whether it be some sort of an auction at the end of the year or however the procurement happened. I didn't think about it early in my career. So then when I got a hold of that, like I found out that jersey was out there, I would reach out to this person and I would say, hey, whatever you paid for it, whatever it's worth to you. Yeah, and luckily no one, tried to gouge me or anything like that. So I did get my Buffalo jersey. That was the one that was hard. That was my rookie year when I signed with 6 games left in the season. That was the one jersey that was really hard to get. And I didn't even think about it at the end of the year, but I got it. And it's really nice to be able to have that one. So guys like you, I truly appreciate.
Out of curiosity, when did you get that Buffalo jersey? Because there was a ton of Buffalo jerseys that hit the market a few years ago where one of the equipment managers for Buffalo basically had, hundreds of jerseys that he had kept, and then they hit the market. And I actually went to that sale, and that's one of the jerseys that I purchased from that sale, was one of the jerseys that I reunited with one of the former players, because I always tried to have a rule if I was approached by the player that I never wanted them to pay for their own jersey. That just didn't seem right to me. So I would always say, hey, do you have something you can trade for it? Or do you want to send me, a signed photo or what, something where, because I just didn't feel right about, hey, pay for this jersey. You're the one that gave it the value back in the day, and you technically wore it and kind of owned it. I know it's kind of team property too, but there was a ton of jerseys that hit the streets in that sale, and I'm curious, that would have been maybe the era that you played for Buffalo that would have been contained there.
I wish I remembered the exact timeline. I think I originally got this jersey around maybe 2005, 6, 7, maybe 2007. I can't remember the exact year because originally when I was playing for Cincinnati, and I got the jersey while I was still playing for Cincinnati, and at the time that was my third team. So I had a basement in my townhouse that I lived in Cincinnati, where I had a pool table and a bar and a couch area, and I had this wall where I had my 3 jerseys and my Pro Bowl jersey all framed on this one wall, and it was Buffalo or Virginia Tech, or I'm sorry, high school, Virginia Tech, Buffalo, Carolina, and Cincinnati. And then on the opposing wall in the corner, I had my Pro Bowl jersey. And at the time, that was all I had. Little did I know I was going to play for 7 more freaking teams after that. But, you know, at the time, I had them individually framed. So I've had it for quite a while, and I just I can't remember, but I know I did get it off of eBay, I think.
Okay, and that could have been one that trickled out before that, because I think it was a little bit later. This was more in like the 2010s, probably 2015, 18, kind of later in that part of the decade. But that it occurred to me because there were so many Buffalo jerseys that hit the street on that particular sale. It was hundreds of them, and I got a couple of the more obscure ones and was able to get 1 or 2 from that sale back to the original holders, because you like we were talking about, you bounced around, but a lot of these guys, I mean, some of them, as you know better than anybody, I mean, they only play a handful of games, so they only had maybe one home jersey and 1 away jersey, and that was it for their entire career.
Yeah. And I find myself very fortunate that I was able to do that. So it was kind of cool that, you know, it at least worked out for me to be able to do that. You know what? And this person actually gave it to me for what they got it for versus the price they were listing it for. So I felt pretty lucky to get that. And I'm even thinking it was eBay, but it might have even been... I can't even remember the details. I just know I felt extremely lucky to have been able to have gotten it from that person.
Definitely. And I think there's a bit of an unwritten rule for a lot of the collectors out there or the dealers that if they do encounter the person that it's their jersey, they try to do right by that person like that person did. And I've done with some players, because that part of it is very fun. That's rewarding in itself. That's more rewarding than selling it for more than you bought it for, or what have you. So that's a cool story. I'm glad we were able to talk about your memorabilia. I was planning on doing that more in the off season, which I'm sure we will, but it worked well with the decoration piece. We're going to take a quick break and come back here with Shayne, get his thoughts on the game and the football week here. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Shayne Graham, having a good conversation about memorabilia here, but wanted to get some of your takes on the football game, because I feel like, Shayne, and you're probably a good one to talk to about this, as you are for any football related subject, but I'm noticing, I don't know if you're noticing this, you obviously live here in Grand Rapids as well. I'm noticing a kind of a reversion to the same old Lions kind of discussion. And now you were in your playing career when this was happening, but I'm sure you're familiar with the concept. And I feel like the two of us are good between our, wanting to inspire people a little bit, your playing career, me being a bit of an optimist, both of us being optimists. I think we need to debunk this a little bit, because we're doing this with an 8-8 team that's had a lot of injuries, and I'm seeing a lot of this on social media and the places where this kind of stuff festers.
Yeah, it's so easy to kind of fall into... It's so easy to fall into negativity, but yet you want to stay positive. So you kind of make statements of almost apathy or almost in a way where you justify things. But really, as a fan, that's what makes it tough, man, because you want things to go a certain way, and when they don't go a certain way, you try to find the positive in everything, and you're just like, well, we had this, we had that, we had this, we had that. And I promise you, the players and the coaches are going through it much harder than we are as fans. So whatever we feel, they are feeling it 10 times as strong. And don't think it does not affect them. It doesn't matter how much money they make. I'm telling you, they are going through as much heartbreak and pain as you can imagine that you feel as a fan. they feel it so much more because they want to win championships and they want to go as far as they can go. Excuse me. They want to have as much success as they can have because it's only going to help their careers individually, but also as a competitive, team-minded individual, you want your team to do as well as you can. And when that happens, it helps your individual career. Because when your team is winning and when you win a Super Bowl, you look at what happens to the contracts of the guys on that team. And even guys that aren't even superstars are usually getting extensions and usually getting security. And the guys that are really superstars usually get the bigger extensions and the bigger security. So that winning and successful culture that you become a part of becomes an exponential growth for your individual career. But when things don't go your way, you have to learn how to deal with it, and you have to learn how to live with it. And sometimes when you don't have those warm, fuzzy feelings, you have to find a way to let it become your motivator. Let it be your push. Let it be your intrinsic motivation. And I promise you those players are going through it tonight, because being eliminated from the playoffs is a tough place to be in, because now you got to think about this. What's going to happen over the next few weeks? Everyone's job is on the line. Free agency, salary cap issues. Is it worth having this much money towards this guy? Is he making this big of a difference? Do we need to bring in somebody else? Is this person the reason? Is this person the reason? And when things aren't going well, that's when you start asking a lot of these internal questions, and the criticism inside the organization becomes much stronger. It puts a lot of people on edge, and now you've got to say, I have to keep performing strong and playing well for my personal pride and for my team, because if I don't, I might be on the chopping block, and I might be wondering where my next contract's going to be or where my next meal's going to come from, because I'm being looked at in a different way now as opposed to how I would be looked at if we're in the playoff chase.
I think there's a bunch of great points in there, because I've always been questioned as a big sports fan and somebody that follows it, and now that follows it for the shows and everything, why I'm not more, I guess, passionate or kind of more live and die by the wins and losses of the team. And I always say to those people, it's because I don't play for the team. I have a little bit of a disconnect, and I understand. I think I have more of an empathy for the players like yourself that do put their bodies on the line, do go out there and put everything into this. So it's like when fans say, oh, well, they quit on the team or they did this. No, their bodies are probably broken down, and they're still going out there and giving everything that they've got for the team, for the individual. You make a great point about that line, because I think some people kind of misconstrue going into business for yourself. Well, achieving as a team and doing right by the team also helps you as an individual oftentimes, because you're viewed as a team guy that's essential to the culture. So then the team is going to want to retain you. It's not all about individual statistics. Oftentimes it's about being a functioning member of that 11-man unit or special teams unit or 53-man unit as a whole.
Absolutely. And understanding that is really hard to see from the outside, but when you see it from the inside and you live through it, I can tell you it's a lot of highs and lows in that world of, man, everything's going my way, our team is rolling, my career is rolling, or, man, our team is struggling. What is my role on this team? What is my role for my career? What do I need to do to get better? What am I doing wrong? All of these things start to become, excuse me, I'm so sorry. All of these things start to become a huge factor. and finding that mental clarity and finding that kind of, inner peace to be able to stay on the right path and stay in the right process all becomes a huge challenge when things don't always go your way.
And I thought you brought up another great point with the fact that, because I mentioned this in the interview with Zack Moran before you jumped on, but we were talking about how this Lions team, and I think probably athletes and football players specifically, are like this as a whole. I think this team operates well with the proverbial chip on their shoulder. And so getting that edge back and saying, okay, yeah, this season didn't entirely play out like we wanted it to. We ended up 9-8, 8-9, what have you. And now we've got to get back to the drawing board. We've got to make some personnel changes. I've got to improve. I've got to maximize my game for the sake of myself and the team. And I think that renewed edge might help the Lions going forward, because they've always played a little bit better when they're counted out, and now they're going to kind of go down because they're going to be at the lower end of this division, so they're going to have a different schedule going forward next year in who they slot against. They're going to have a better pick going into the draft, so there's going to be some ways for them to improve the team in the offseason, but hopefully the players can use that to gain an edge going forward, rather than, like you said, kind of lose their focus or go in a negative direction.
Yes. Yeah. And I think finding that edge is so hard to do. I think all of us during COVID, we can remember, okay, what was the one documentary that we all watched that sits in your mind? First thing that comes to your mind, what comes up?
Well, I'm going to give you two, but I'm assuming you're going to say The Last Dance is the one. But there was also Tiger King.
Okay. you know what?
Saying.
Touche. You got me on that. but yes, The Last Dance. Okay. Now that hit a lot of us, especially in my age group, a lot, because I was in high school during that 1990s Chicago Bulls run, and I was a Bulls fan, okay? My dad used Michael Jordan as one of my prime examples for motivation when I was growing up, even when he was at UNC. But I not only loved that documentary because, one, okay, the soundtrack was fire. It was amazing. But it told such a story of inspiration and personal intrinsic motivation that I hope it motivated a lot of people to realize, if I want to get to the level of this person who is the iconic king of sports pinnacle performance, okay? I don't care what anybody says. LeBron James can go swim in a creek. I have no cares about him. Michael Jordan is the pinnacle of sports performance as far as being the icon of the best of all time, blah, blah, blah. And when you saw the way he reacted and treated and pushed himself and never asked anything of his teammates he wouldn't be willing to do himself plus some, I think we all learned some lessons in that it doesn't matter all these external variables. All that matters is what I do to control myself, what I do to keep myself in the mental space, to create the physical space, to create the performance that allows me to be the best I can be. And without all of those together, you learn so many lessons. And sometimes you have to lose to get that. And it's so cliche because, everyone goes back to that. When your team doesn't win and when you don't get the success you want, it's a cliche like, oh, I'm going to use it as, well, guess what? You have to. It's all you can do. All you can do is learn from that experience and find a way to make it better the next time. And unfortunately, the Lions have rolled into that situation with a few more games left in the season, but they have to use these last few games as a springboard to not only had and stacked their own resumes individually, but to build a culture that's going to roll into next season.
Exactly. We were talking about that in the previous segment, that this isn't, people I think are, some fans are going to look at it as, well, this game doesn't mean anything. No, it means a tremendous amount to certain players, certain members of the team, the team as a whole, because no, it may not be as much about the win and the loss, but it will be about, hey, this young guy that's trying to fight for a spot, where can they get themselves for next year? The same thing happened even on the 15-2 team last year, because they had a lot of guys that filled in defensively that became key parts of the team here this year. So that could start to happen with this last game, and then give the momentum heading into the offseason and all that decision making that happens then. But I thought it was a very salient point that you made about kind of the singular nature of motivation, and that being important, because I think people get too caught up in the distraction of, well, this person this person that, I'm watching this person on social media, or this person is getting this, and it becomes very external. Jordan was very intense about the singular motivation of, how can I personally get better? I'm not worried about that noise on the outside. If I think George Karl snubbed me at a restaurant, I'm going to use that to destroy the entire league next season. And then Karl comes out and says, well, I didn't even do that. Doesn't matter. He used it as internal motivation. He internalized it and made himself better as a result. When you get caught in the noise from the outside, that's when you can get distracted and lose track of that singular nature of motivation.
Absolutely. You have to excuse me. I've got a little tickle in my throat going on right now.
Well, you're fighting through just like the rest of us. We appreciate you trying to fight through here, and this is what we're talking about. Because I mean, this even happened with the team. I think that's something that will come out more in the coming days. But I think that's why Decker ended up missing the game today. What I'm reading from some of the writers here, and because I mean, we were looking at it in studio here with Aaron and my mom. We were looking at the fact that we're really one of the most viral states with this whole flu thing going on. So I think it had even passed through the Lions. So in addition to dealing with everything else, they were dealing with a bug going through the locker room, because that's got to be tough to avoid. If one guy gets sick, how do you avoid getting everybody else sick on that team?
Yeah, and you know what? Having been a coach during COVID and all of that, I've lived through playing through sickness. I've lived through having the flu. I've lived through, like, if I can't physically perform and move, or if I'm so contagious I'm not allowed to be around people, like, I've been through that. I've actually never played during the time where I missed a game because of sickness, but I've missed practices and then I've played through it in a game. Today's world's a little different because there's certain fears and certain things that the world has kind of projected on us. But when you understand there are certain things and certain, like, when I try to explain to someone, oh, I'm really sick, my fever, my this, my that, and they're like, oh, well, take a sick day. I'm like, you don't understand. I don't get sick days. Like, that's just not in my world. And there are people that can understand that because maybe they're in high profile positions where there is no excuse. But I lived that life for such a long time that it had to be almost like I cannot move without either body functions being out of control or I truly cannot get up without passing out type situations are the only way that I was not able to push through something. And that says a lot for a lot of guys. And you think about, they talk about the Jordan flu game and you find out it was food poisoning. But being able to push through things like that, it takes a lot of mental toughness, but also, it makes you think about, like, what are the things we sometimes justify and kind of let ourselves out of in our daily, let's let myself be lazy today because I don't feel like it type situation. And it gives you a little bit of perspective, I guess.
It does. And I had kind of a similar situation with my career being in intelligence and everything. I was not really afforded the same. I was kind of like you. It's like, okay, you're sick. Okay, deal with it. Figure out a way to deal with it. Things still have to move along. You still have to move the mission and fill that role, because that you can't really get backfilled, and especially with the nature of the business. But I can definitely relate to that, and I've always tried to take that mindset into my everyday life too, because it's the idea of, okay, if I can fight through today, I can make tomorrow better in two different ways. I can move forward with what I was trying to do. And even if I'm not 100%, if I can do 75%, I can show myself, hey, I was able to fight through yesterday, so I should be able to be even better today. And now I can take that momentum and not fall behind because because I was lazy and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. And now that's a cascading effect. They both basically send you down a cascading path, but it's which path you want to send yourself down. Do you want to start the snowball effect of getting things going, or do you want to start the momentum to, I'll do it tomorrow?
Yeah. And honestly, I think that's an internal struggle we all have sometimes. Procrastination is one of the biggest, I think, evils that we all fight with as far as internal struggle, because we can always justify and validate, like, taking our time and pushing something off till tomorrow. But I think about a movie series I watched when I was a kid, and I remember Rocky, okay? So this is kind of cheesy, but Rocky 1, right? Like, this guy that's kind of this underdog. He fights through. He shows he's tough. He does this. He almost wins. He takes it to the finish. Rocky 2, he goes through some depression. He figures some things out. He fights back. But Rocky 3, he becomes a little apathetic. He becomes a little lazy, a little. He starts taking things for granted, and all of a sudden he loses everything, or what feels like loses everything. And he's reminded by his wife that everything you're trying to fight for, it doesn't matter about the money and the fame. It's your pride. It's what is it you actually do to fight through your difficulties. And he has a mentor, his former, rival, that says there is no tomorrow. You have to fight for today, because today is all you have. And I think I always go back to that whenever I start feeling sorry for myself, and whenever I start thinking, I can wait till tomorrow. I go back to Apollo Creed saying, there is no tomorrow. There is no tomorrow. And that reminds me, when I have a challenge, there's one word that pops into my head: good.
Exactly.
This is going to be really hard. You know what? Good. I'm going to get through this. This is going to be impossible. You know what? Good. I'm going to prove it's not impossible. This is going to suck. Good. I'm going to get through this. And when I get through it, I'm going to be more proud of this than I've been proud of anything else I've ever done. So it's a mindset, it's just finding yourself in a place where you can truly fight through something and not let yourself give in.
It's great advice. And then you prove, like you said, you prove to yourself that you can do that. And then you move the needle to understand, I'm stronger than I thought. I'm more capable than I thought. You're also speaking my language with the Rocky movies. I want to continue I love those kinds of action movies. I want to continue the movie conversation after the break, because the question of the day, I haven't asked you yet, but it's favorite Christmas movies. That's what we were discussing. So we'll come back with Shayne and ask ask him that question after the break and get a little bit more football in. I want to talk to him about the Groza Award, too. So stick with us. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Coming back here with Shayne Graham to having a good conversation, a little Christmas motivation, inspiration here. And I meant to ask you, Shayne, at the beginning of the conversation about any favorite Christmas movies or ones that you watch tradition-based, because I've been having this conversation a lot today, both on air and off, because one of my favorite Christmas movies, but this is a very argued point here with people. I like the movie Die Hard a lot because I like that action genre that we're talking about, but it's also up in the air to some people whether or not that's a Christmas movie.
I literally had a conversation with some of my family members tonight and said, I hope everything's going well at the Nakatomi Plaza right now, because I know it can get a little dicey this time of year. But I do believe that Die Hard is a great Christmas movie. But also, if I'm going to give probably my favorites, I'm going to throw Elf. I'm going to throw A Christmas Story, because I do have a leg lamp at my house. But I'm also going to throw in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation as probably my strongest favorite Christmas movie.
Those are all classics. I love that you have a Fragile leg lamp in your place. That's great. Yeah, and I like the Nakatomi.
It's a major award.
I mean, hey, for a kicker, that's what you need. You need a leg lamp.
Absolutely.
But those are good picks. Yeah, Die Hard is up there for me. I love the Nakatomi reference, but because I was having this conversation and then we kind of boiled it down to, wait a minute, it's been made, well, is it a Christmas movie or not? But aren't all Christmas movies, they're just Christmas movies because they're staged at Christmas. It's like Vacation wasn't a Christmas movie, but Christmas Vacation was, because it was about Christmas. Or Home Alone is a Christmas movie because it takes place at Christmas. If it had taken place at Easter, it wasn't a Christmas movie. You know, I mean, so I think we're like getting too involved with the whole Die Hard thing. But yeah, I like it as a Christmas movie. And then you add in like an Elf, or my mom and I always liked the Charlie Brown Christmas, some of the classic cartoons when I was younger. And so yeah, there's some good ones out there, but I'm glad those are good choices there. I wanted to get your take real quick before we get you out of here, because we previewed the Groza a little bit, and I'm curious about your thoughts about that award and the guy that won it. And we had profiled the Tokyo Toe. He didn't end up getting it, but it seemed like a pretty competitive year this year.
Yeah, I think all three guys in the finals, the guy from Georgia Tech, the guy from Hawaii, and the guy from Stanford, I think, not Stanford, I'm sorry, Oklahoma, I think all were very deserving. But when you look at the numbers of Tate Sendale, I mean, I think he was 100% from 50-plus, and he broke a school record for 55-plus, maybe 4 field goals over 55 yards. I don't see how you don't give it to that guy. Unfortunately, he did not make his certain amount of field goals in his playoff game against Alabama. But I still think you look at the body of work for the season, and I think he was very deserving of it.
It seemed like a competitive group this year, and I'm curious. One of the things that we'll do in the off season here to use your expertise is kind of be able to give the people a little bit better preview of the kickers and punters. I feel like in the draft those are rarely discussed because people don't have the expertise for that, but you'll be able to give us that expertise as we head into more draft talk, because it is hard to assess these guys, but you're literally in the process of trying to establish a system to better assess them, not only through your coaching and advising, but actually a more kind of statistical based system where it's a little easier to assess these guys because it is a category unto itself.
Absolutely. And, it stinks sometimes that, award winners, like, what does your team give you the opportunity? Are there better guys out there? Who knows, that maybe just didn't get the opportunities? But you know what? That's how it works in life. And even for the Pro Bowl, the best kicker in the NFL may not be the Pro Bowl kicker. It's just going to be the guy that probably got 30-plus field goal attempts for the year and capitalized on the most of them. I know the few years, I think I was an alternate like 3 or 4 times, meaning I was up there for consideration, but I just didn't win the total votes. And I think that when that happens, you're a little prey to the fan voting. It's 1/3 fan voting, 1/3 coaches voting, 1/3 player voting. I think when that happens, there's always going to be that slight chance that maybe somebody who wasn't as good as somebody else gets it. But also, I think they still probably give it to somebody that's pretty dang deserving. And I don't think there could have been a guy that you say, oh, they didn't have a good year, they don't deserve it. No, I think everyone considered was up there, and it works how it works. And it's the same way with the Heisman. Like when you try to debate who should win the Heisman, is it the guy whose team won the most games and they also had really good stats? Or is it the guy that had the best stats that maybe their team went and didn't win all the games? Is it truly the best player, or is it the best player on the best team? And you have to, like, this dichotomy of figuring that out will always be under debate, and I don't think there's ever going to be a surefire way of finding that out. So you just have to be, happy for the guy that wins it and realize they actually were deserving.
I think that kind of happened this year to a degree with the Heisman. Obviously, as you know, I'm an Indiana alum, and so I was happy that Fernando Mendoza was able to win it, and he was kind of that convalescence of what you're talking about, the best player on the best team kind of thing, but he also had the statistical package that then defended that position. I don't think there was anybody that you could choose over him because there wasn't that overwhelming statistical advantage from somebody on a team that didn't do quite as well. The interesting argument to me, because one of my friends from Indiana was asking me about this and saying, hey, is there any chance he loses this? Who do you see as the biggest competition? And actually, it's the local kid here, Trinidad Chambliss, who used to play at Ferris State and then transferred to Mississippi. I would have viewed him as the largest competition because of his story and his background and his jump that he made, but he only ended up starting 10 games versus 12 or 13 from all these other guys. So that factors in for some of these players too. You don't play in the conference championship. You don't have the full range of games. It's hard to put the statistics up. So he didn't end up, he was, I think, like 8th or something in the voting. If he would have had 2 or 3 more games, he probably would have been more competitive from a statistical standpoint. But like you said, there's a lot of factors.
A lot of factors. And, I remember my senior year, we had Michael Vick, and he had one of the most amazing years you could imagine for a college football player. But the winner ended up being another guy whose team was ranked a little bit higher, Chris Winkie. And I don't know if you can say that which one of those was better. Okay, well, which one had a more successful NFL career? Take away the other outside variables and distractions and all that. Which one was actually the better player? Well, I think, in my opinion, Michael Vick was the better player. He played for a smaller school with less prominence and still brought success to that school that they had never seen before, whereas Chris Winkie had all these All-Americans all around him, higher recruiting guys, but yet still became an undefeated national champion. And it's like, well, which guy was really better? And then you look at some of these past winners and losers, and you think, was it the guy that was really better, or was it the guy who was on a team that gave them the opportunity to be more successful? And I think we're always going to question that. But ultimately, who are we to look at it and say that whoever won it, did they or did they not truly deserve at least the mention of being in that conversation? And I think if they're in that conversation, they probably deserved it one way or the other.
Exactly. There's a reason that they're in that room and talked about in that light. So yeah, it was interesting to see another award season here, but I'm glad we got your take on the Groza Award specifically, but we'll have more talk next week here. Shayne will be back in studio for the New Year's show, and we'll have more college football to talk about and a lot of different things to discuss, but appreciate you joining us on Christmas here and playing through the cold as usual, playing through the tough times and giving people some inspiration, and enjoy the rest of your Christmas, and we'll talk to you on the New Year's show here.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks, Shayne. Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon.
Merry Christmas to you too. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to Shayne Graham. Appreciate him joining us here, as well as Zack Moran. Appreciate them taking the time out on their Christmas days here. But we got to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and close up the show. You're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. I want to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors: Encore Business Group, Eric Hall Aesthetic and General Dentistry, Williams Chiropractic, Elite Winning Solutions, and Sal's Complete Home Painting and Handyman Services. Appreciate their support. Appreciate your support. Tuning in to us on Christmas here, and I hope you enjoyed the Christmas episode, something a little bit different. Appreciate A.A. Ron keeping us on track here. A Merry Christmas to him. Glad Mom could come in her Christmas garb. She's got a Santa-laden jacket there that she's donned for the Christmas show, so glad she's back in studio, and we've got a busy week ahead here, even for the holiday week for the Jethro schedule. Tune into the Sports Project if you want to hear more of me. The Sports Professor will be out, so it'll be substitute teacher vibes on the Sports Project on Saturday 10 to 12, and then we'll have Polka Pops and the full weekend schedule. Jeff Isaacs all request show on Saturday. Tune into Sports Intel on Monday 7 to 9, and then the Sports Project prime time 7 to 9 on Wednesday, and then we'll be back, as Shayne and I mentioned, 7 to 9 on January 1, celebrating the new year with you guys, and covering a lot of the college football, because we'll have a busy college football schedule there. So if you missed anything from the show, be sure to tune in to the YouTube channel, podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to download and follow. Appreciate all your support, and have a very Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you next year here, I guess. So have a great night, and thanks for kicking it with Shayne and I.